about this one a lot, and I really get this concept, and because we talked about it a lot, that it's if you trigger the fight or flight response over and over and over again in your life, you tend to deplete these hormones that we all need.
Yeah.
And thus, one of the reasons for hormone replacement is because we never stop needing these hormones.
That's right.
But just to keep dragging you back, that's a different concept. The one that was new to me today.
I promise I'm getting there.
Okay. The one that's new to me is how
What's
can I lower my blood sugar levels by taking hormones?
And I knew it was going to take me time to get here.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you recap it for us if you would.
Yeah.
But the next thing that happens, let's say to a 38-year-old woman who's done a little bit too much stress response, when she goes in the stress response at 39, she's going to have depleted her estrogen and testosterone a lot more than she has. The cortisol and adrenaline will be preserved, so she does the stress response, and she's mainly now got to emphasize cortisol and adrenaline, and they raise blood glucose.
I see.
And so lower estrogen or even lower testosterone for a man, lower testosterone for a woman, when she gets stressed, she's going to have to primarily rely upon her cortisol and adrenaline, which are blood glucose elevators. And I describe this in detail in a chapter in our book, Happy, Healthy Hormones, in the weight chapter, interestingly enough. And so blood glucose getting elevated artificially by the stress response, it's fine if there's reason to, but most of the time there isn't reason to. And you wind up, your body has to adjust to these elevations that it doesn't like and doesn't do well with except in real stress. And so what happens is you get these outpourings of insulin every time you raise the blood glucose. Insulin takes the blood glucose out of the blood, puts it into the cells where it's needed for thinking, for running, etc. It's high octane fuel. And you get these insulin elevations over and over and over and over again. Your body says, we've got to modulate that. We don't like insulin spikes. And it sets up a system where your cells get resistant to insulin. You get insulin resistance. And thus starts the climb of a fasting blood glucose and elevated glucose levels. And that's what we measure in medicine. In what keeps a fasting blood glucose should be pretty low. You wake up in the morning, you haven't eaten for 12 hours or 8 hours. Your fasting blood glucose should be somewhere between 60 and 70.
Yeah.
Enough to keep everything functioning, and your body knows how to maintain that. But it shouldn't be 85 or 90 or 95. These are pretty low numbers. These are still within normal range. They're not normal. These laboratory normals are based on the American laboratory going public, most of whom have stressed this system and thus have elevated fasting glucose, so you get reference ranges. And I mentioned this earlier today, that over time I started looking at fasting glucoses very carefully, and I see young people, healthy people, have fasting blood glucoses between 60 and 70. And then I started to notice people in their 30s, people in their 40s, their fasting blood glucoses can be between 85 and 95.
Still within what's called normal, but why is it that they have high normal and young people have low normal? They're obviously on some sort of trajectory towards higher and higher blood glucose levels.
And it's good to catch it when you're young. But the moral of the story, finally, I'm getting to Sandy's question, is that if you have lowered your estrogen just enough so there's not abundant amount, and you have to rely more on your adrenaline and cortisol glucose elevators, you're going to wind up, that's going to be one reason, there's several reasons how you can get elevated fasting blood glucose, absolutely, but one reason is that you don't have enough estrogen and testosterone for women.
Yeah.
And so, for that reason and many others, you want to catch when that estrogen and progesterone and testosterone are dropping, and you want to replenish them for optimal health. And you want to do it early, and you want to do it precisely. And anyone who is fully trained in menopause medicine, specializing in it, that's really gone on to get the full body of knowledge, and it is a lot, they can pick up on your story, your history, your medical history. Like we have questionnaires that the members of our menopause method certification program and members send out to patients, and these histories are so detailed that someone reading through your story can detect very often, oh, her estrogen has dropped. Yes, she's still menstruating.
Yeah.
Oh, her progesterone has dropped. Oh, her testosterone has dropped. Not rocket surgery to figure this out.
I love this science, and it makes a lot of sense, and you've explained why they're interconnected, blood glucose levels and taking hormones. And it starts to boil down to, if I were listening to this, it really comes down to my action statements. What am I going to do with this knowledge that you've just given me? And this is the path that seems to make sense to me, and you tell me if I'm on track here. We learn at some point through a standard medical visit that our blood glucose levels are rising.
Yeah.
Right? And that can happen early.
Yeah.
That can start to happen in our 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
And yet another reason to check a little box in your head that says, okay, I need to start seeing a menopause specialist.
Yeah.
Is but low blood glucose levels matters. And there's lots of things we need to do about it, but one of them is hormones. So
Exactly.
if they're going up, add to the list of important things to do in life, go see a menopause specialist.
Yeah.
And get them down.
Catch it early.
Catch it early. And just as a side adjunct to what you said, what is called pre-diabetes,
Yes.
that triggers the response in many doctors,
Yes.
is sometimes, if the effect is happening earlier than they may say it. They might not tell you you're pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
They might not tell you your number's going up. But if
Yeah.
I heard you right, you still want to see that track. You want to know where you're falling in that normal range. And if it's the
Yeah.
high side of normal, heck man, catch it now.
Exactly.
Do what you can, including
Hormones.
hormones.
Well, one of the most common blood tests, if not most common blood panel that's done
Yeah.
for everyone who gets their blood drawn, measures the fasting glucose.
Right.
And so let me tell you my own opinion about what numbers you should be paying attention to. Is it starts to creep above, your fasting blood glucose starts to creep above the mid-80s, start asking the question why.
Yeah.
There are two major reasons why. And again, someone who is knowledgeable about this, there's three major reasons why. Someone who's knowledgeable about this, and even traditional training tells us this, that the main reason your glucose is rising has to do with dietary indiscretions. Too much simple carbohydrates.
Right.
And so that one's got to be ferreted out. And very often, general physicians will see that rising blood glucose or not. And, you know, my traditional training, my alarm bells started going off when I left medical school when someone was above 120. In fact, sorry for being so loud, because that was considered normal.
Yeah.
Because then we knew they were way over the top. And that's time to turn someone over to someone who really knows how to manage real diabetes.
Yeah.
But now, the alert buttons should go off in the mid-80s. And what do you want to zero in on first? The most common causes. So one of the most common causes is dietary indiscretions. And so any physician who's really trained in being a detective is going to ask someone for a diet diary. 3 days. Not your best days, your most typical days. And you tell the truth in that diet diary. And someone who's trained to do this is going to be able to pick out when there's major indiscretions going on here, and that the key to lowering blood glucose is about diet primarily. But is it ever only about diet? Nah. We've had a lot of stresses too. So hormones should come into play, especially from the mid-30s on. It's not like they haven't been depleting since your early 20s. They have been, men and women.
Yeah.
But, and that's the challenge, because a woman could say, what do you mean I have low estrogen? And I can say, well, she says, I'm still having periods. How could you say that I have low estrogen? And I could say, because of some of the details that you've asked. I asked you about Are you losing any hair? I asked you, is your skin changing? I asked you if you're getting a little vaginal dryness. There's a long list when estrogen deficiency starts to occur. So you want to start addressing that, because the importance of getting blood glucose into decent ranges is so crucial for your long-term health, for your arteries, for your brain.
Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Let's suppose that someone watching this already has diabetes.
Yeah.
Is it still valuable for that person to get on hormones specifically for their diabetes?
Well, you would get on hormones for a lot of reasons,
Yeah.
just for being low on hormones to begin with.
Right.
Absolutely. And the answer is yes. I mean, there are people who are on insulin who have taken several measures to address the causes of their blood glucose issues, and they've gotten off of insulin. Now, I love insulin. I would never suggest for someone to just come off of insulin. No way.
Yeah.
I mean, and endocrinologists are so good that once someone needs insulin, even if you have to inject it, you want to do that one very carefully. And yet, there are several, thousands of people who were on insulin, burrowed into the causes of their blood glucose elevations, addressed the dietary causes, the stress causes, the hormonal causes, and there's other possibilities, those are the big three, and gotten off of insulin. That's a big deal. They didn't get off of insulin because it was imperative that they got off of insulin. No, we love insulin when it's needed. They got off insulin because they didn't need it anymore, because they addressed the causes. And one of the causes, especially someone in their mid to late 30s, a woman, they should definitely investigate the hormonal issues for a lot of reasons, blood glucose being one of the major ones.